Hello, good people of ceramics. We are going to make slump molds with some texture. Miss Young made an awesome couple of videos, and I watched hers and I got inspired just to try it a different way. So this is not the only way to make a slump mold, and this is not the only way to apply texture to it, because her video does it in a different way. And I thought that was awesome, and then I just thought, hey, I'm going to try it this way and see if it works just as well. And that's sometimes part of being an artist, is trying one thing a lot of different ways. So I just thought I'd make this video to show you how I applied some different techniques, and hopefully it's helpful. I think one of the hardest parts about making a larger bowl is just rolling out the slab. And since you guys are using the anything you can find around the house, I think just getting a big enough slab that you can trace a bowl onto it, or maybe a smaller bowl onto it, because our spoon rests were a little bit small, and so just getting some larger area might be a challenge to get it really nice and even. I have mine already prepared because we've already done rolling slabs, so I hope that you can just apply what you knew and what you did for the last one into this project, only larger and a little bit more circular probably. The first thing I'm going to do is just take my metal rib and smooth down my slab. In preparing for this, I've got a few things nearby. I am going to do this in kind of a giant popcorn bowl. My bowl doesn't need to be this big, and also it doesn't need to come all the way up to the rim, so it's going to be smaller than this bowl is. We are going to put them inside of it, so your job is to find a bowl around your house that would be a pleasing shape that you could lay a slab into and create the size that you want. I would hope that you would find some kind of bowl that is a little bit larger than like a tiny cereal bowl, but I know that we all don't have the same materials at home. I found a little air bubble in my clay, so I'm just making sure that I pop that before I move on. It's a bummer. Apparently my wedging needs to get better. All right. Once I'm done smoothing down, I'm going to apply my texture now. So that is why this demo is different than Miss Young's, is Miss Young chose to bring in the texture later, which is just fine. But I am going to try to apply a bunch of leaves and then to put it in the slump mold so that the texture would be on the outside of the bowl instead of the inside. And I'm just gonna see how it goes. I think it might be pretty successful. So I'll speed this part up for you so you don't have to sit through it. Okay, so now that I've pressed my leaves in, I found out where my shape would be and then rolled them in. I haven't done this many leaves before, so we'll see how it comes out. One thing that I really tried to do was press them in and not really worry about taking them out, because I'm gonna actually have the bowl dry with them pressed in, and then if I can't get them back out of the clay, they'll just burn up in the kiln anyway, so I'm not too worried about that. So now I'm going to cut my shape of my bowl, and I just use the exact bowl that I'm going to use for my slump mold. I'm going to grab a potter's needle, and remember, just like in the spoon rests, we keep our potter's needle or our tool to cut out at 90 degrees, exactly perpendicular to the table, making one decisive cut. I'm gonna clean up these edges later, but it sure helps if we don't have our edges all torn up or at different angles. All right, and then I'm just gonna cut the rest of this slab out of here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to be laying this into the bowl to get the shape of the bowl. But if I did it just with the clay, it might get stuck to the inside. Now, clay goes from wet to leather hard, and it shrinks like 3 to 6%. That means that if it's stuck to this side and it's stuck to this side and it's trying to shrink, it's going to break. So we want to be aware of the bowl shrinking as it dries and making sure that it's not stuck to the edges, so that it would be stressed and then it would fracture. So what we're going to do is we're going to lay in some paper towel. You could lay in some napkin, even saran wrap, something that would create a barrier so the wet clay doesn't stick to your bowl. I'm just using 2 pieces of paper towel that are kind of crisscrossed in there. Now I'm going to lay my slab in and try to be as careful as I can. I could have the leaves up if I wanted them on the inside of the bowl, but I actually want them on the outside, so I'm going to do leaves down. This is just personal choice. It's a little bit hard flipping a large slab over, especially when it's really wet like this. So I would just make sure I have a lot of room, and I might want a board on top and then flip and then put it in. So this might be a little bit tricky. I'll show you what I do. All right, so I have a bat, but you guys could use just any kind of board or large book. My slab is enormous. Yours might not be this big, so maybe you can get away with a little bit less. I'm gonna put my board on top of it. I'm gonna put my hand under and I'm just gonna flip and then peel this off. Then it's not like sticking to that as I try to put it into my bowl. All right, now this is kind of the tricky part. I'm gonna try to get it as centered as possible. I'm just gonna lay it in as evenly as possible. Press down into that bowl. I'm trying not to press so hard that it gets out of shape at all. I'm going to take a damp sponge. Now that means damp, not wet. I just squeezed all the water out. And I'm just slowly working it down into the bowl, kind of pressing firmly, but not wanting to rip or cause one area to be thicker than another. And there it is, kind of down into the bowl. I have the leaves on the opposite side. And what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna dip my sponge into water, totally wring it out, and then go ahead and kind of smooth down and even out the inside of my bowl to make sure that it's a nice curve. And there's no like weird flat spots or big bubbles. I'm just gonna spin and wipe, spin and wipe. My edges I can clean up a little later. I am kind of going like that along the edge, but I don't need to make them perfect because once this bowl comes out, I can give a little bit more attention to them. So I'm wiping and kind of pressing it down really a little bit at a time, getting it to form to my bowl so that it's really nice and even. Now my texture, of course, is a different idea than yours. So if you don't want to do leaves, that's just fine. You could do this same technique of pressing into the mold and then bring your bowl out and press into your bowl later, kind of like a combo of Miss Young and my techniques. You could do like something like the doily or some kind of like mesh netting and roll it into your slab and do it similar to mine but use a different texture. I'm just making sure my bowl is nice and smooth. and it's formed to the edges. So I'm just kind of going around and around, pushing it down, pushing it in, making sure that it's really nice like that. Now, here's the tricky part. It's all about timing in ceramics and making sure that your bowl is the right dryness to take out. Right now, if I took that bowl right out of there, it's just gonna flop because it's too wet. If I leave it in there for hours and hours and hours and I forget about it and I come the next day, there's a chance that it like dried out way beyond what it needs to, and if it was stuck on any kind of side, it's gonna crack and break. So I would suggest setting a timer. And I would set a timer on your phone for about an hour and leave it out for an hour, and when that timer comes off, you just check and see if it will pop out and see if it's leather hard and it will hold its shape if you take it out. If it's too wet and it's still flopping on you, I would set another hour and I would check it again at an hour. You want it leather hard so that it pops out, but that you can wrap it up real quick so that later you can attach. Okay, I just hit mine with a little bit of blow dry, so it is not so tacky to the touch, but it still has some moisture in it. And it's enough that I can just slide by pulling the paper towel, and I'm very carefully bringing out my bowl, and I can just set it down like that. Now at this point, I am pretty happy with how that looks. Obviously the leaves aren't gonna stay in there. Once it gets a little bit more dry, I'm gonna peel as much as I can out of there, and then if I can't get to some little pieces that get stuck, I'm not gonna worry because it'll burn off in the kiln. Here's my next one. This one's real big. I need to stand up. Just tipping my bowl, making sure that if it starts to change shape on me, then it's probably not dry enough to take out. Seems like it held okay. And now it needs to stiffen up even more so that I can flip it over and put a foot on it and manipulate it even more. I am going to wrap it up like this, and I might let it set out a little bit. I'm just feeling the moisture in it and thinking that I might want it a little bit more dried out before I really clean up these edges, because they're quite wet, and sometimes it just makes more of a mess if you try to clean up edges when they're so wet that it smears all over. It's a little bit easier when they're more leather hard and you can sharpen those, or like sharpen the edge and then make a curve on it and finish those up. But I'm pretty happy with how these started out. I have a pair of bowls now, unexpectedly, and I'll show you the next step later.